Hey everyone, this is Lauren. The topic that I chose to do my project on is obtaining asylum in the United States and how to do so. Individuals come to the U.S. at all times from foreign nations seeking protection because they have suffered or fear they may suffer persecution due to political opinion, nationality, race, religion, or gender. These individuals may be permitted to stay in the United States if they are eligible. There are many factors involved here and two main processes to be granted asylum in the U.S. Okay, so the first is affirmative process. This individual must be physically present in the United States. You can apply for asylum in the U.S. regardless of your current immigration status, but you must apply within 1 year of when you arrived, unless there is a change in circumstances that may affect your eligibility for asylum later on, or there are extraordinary circumstances that prevent you from timely filing, and you then filed within a reasonable amount of time given those circumstances. To apply for affirmative asylum, you would submit a Form I-589 application for asylum and for withholding of removal to the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. If it is not approved and you do not have legal immigration status, the USCIS issues a Form I-682 notice to appear, and you will refer the case to an immigration judge at the Executive Office for Immigration Review. The immigration judge would conduct a hearing and issue a decision that is completely independent of the USCIS. So there are a couple steps to receiving affirmative asylum. The first one being arriving in the U.S. You must be physically present to apply for affirmative asylum. Then you would apply using the Form I-589 as discussed earlier. After that, you would receive an ASC appointment notice. At that appointment, you would be fingerprinted and go through a background and security check. After that appointment, you would receive an interview notice with a date, time, and location for your interview with an asylum officer. This is typically, but not always, within 21 days. For the interview, you must bring your spouse and any children that are also seeking asylum with you. You can bring an attorney, and you must bring an interpreter if you cannot proceed with the interview in English. You can also bring witnesses to testify on your behalf. The asylum officer will make their decision whether you are eligible to apply for asylum and meet the legal definition of a refugee. In most cases, about 2 weeks after your interview, you will need to return to the asylum office you interviewed at and receive your decision. So, the second way to receive asylum in the U.S. would be through defensive asylum. Defensive asylum is a process that occurs when an individual requests asylum as a defense against removal from the United States and is in removal proceedings in immigration court with the Executive Office for Immigration Review. Individuals can begin the defensive asylum process by being referred to an immigration judge after they are determined to be ineligible for affirmative asylum, or they are placed in removal proceedings because they were apprehended in the United States or a port of entry into the U.S. without the proper documentation, or they are already in the removal process and found to have a credible fear of persecution by an asylum officer. An immigration judge will hear the defensive asylum case in a court proceeding and hear arguments from you and your attorney, as well as an attorney for ICE. They will then decide whether you are eligible and possibly grant asylum. If you are not granted asylum and are ineligible for any other forms of relief, the judge will order you to be removed from the U.S., and this is an appealable decision. Okay, so this is a chart that I found on the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services website. I thought that it was really useful when looking at the differences between affirmative and defensive asylum. So for affirmative asylum, we kind of already went over this, but an individual has not been placed in removal proceedings before an immigration judge. They affirmatively submit the I-589 form to the USCIS, and they appear before an asylum officer for a non-adversarial interview. That is definitely different from a court-like proceeding that would happen in a defensive asylum case. And the individual must provide their own qualified interpreter for the asylum interview. And so for the defensive process, the individual has already been placed in removal proceedings before an immigration judge. They are, so the court-like hearing is adversarial, which is definitely different from the affirmative process, and you would have your own attorney, and the U.S. would also have an attorney. The immigration court also provides a qualified interpreter for the asylum hearing and all other proceedings. In an affirmative case, you must provide your own. Okay, so that is it. These are my sources that I used. It was mainly just the one website, and I found it really useful. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much for watching.